Trond, you were first.
Thank you. This is to Graham. The issue of the exchange rate between the local parallel currency and the national currency. I think it's completely impossible to put up rules about what should be done or how can we avoid that the exchange rate changes away from what we wish it to be, etc. Because it's incredibly easy to circumvent any sort of rule. So you will, if you do not allow the exchange rate to float, it will you will have a black market between the local currency and the national currency. And I suggest, I would like your reaction to that. The point of having an exchange rate seen from the position of the people managing the local currency is simply to suggest what's a reasonable value of this thing. And the reasonable value is simply that 1 point in the local exchange currency is £1 in the national currency. Just to give some sort of suggested anchor, and then you just hope that it won't fluctuate 10 times lower or something away from it, but it must be allowed to fluctuate slightly, in my opinion, because you have to live with it.
Well, I mean, there are a number of points that it's a very, I think it's a very complex question, first of all, because first of all, in the start-up phase of the establishment of the currency, when you're trying to communicate the currency proposition, and people are saying, you know, what's this about? You have to be able to keep things relatively simple. You know, most people you're communicating, they're certainly not, you know, currency experts, and they need to know. You know, the first thing people are going to ask is, what's it worth? You know, and also, I do believe that you have to have a degree of exchangeability. So people, even if they don't actually use it, to say, you know, this underpins the currency, it's okay. You obviously want to be able to encourage the continued use, but if anyone wants to get out at any time, you're not forcing them to stay in, and that currency exchange rate is published and known easily. But hopefully, you know, I didn't get a chance to go into the sort of complexities, because you could spend a whole day really on those things, but you're going to give exits the opportunity for somebody with currency to exit, but at the same time you're going to try and provide additional incentives for them to maintain the currency in circulation. And again, the whole point of weekly reporting for the currency management, you know, what is actually happening, what is the level of liquidity, is it going up or down, and you do need to be able to take you know, steps to try and correct any imbalances in, you know, in the growth of the currency. And I don't know if that answers your question.
So, yeah, to some degree.
Okay.
Can't use too much time now.
Yeah. Okay.
Jeff?
Yes. Question for Joel. I'm feeling a bit dumb this morning, so and I missed the very first part of your speech. But I was trying to think, how, if I'm a Kenyan farmer or person planting trees, with the diagram you gave at the end there, you showed that the payments would be coming in these PPCCs. How would I redeem those in the first instance? Rather than thinking about them gaining value later on, and of course the other value coming from the trees later on that you explained. Just you know, if I need to redeem them in the market to buy goods and services immediately, how does that happen?
Well, in the case of the protection of standing trees, which are not planned for harvesting for non-timber products, there is no revenue stream within the parallel planting methodology to allow for that. So, in other words, since no money is being generated from standing trees within parallel planting practice, the PPCC in that instance could not be exchanged into national money, and therefore its function would purely be as a medium of exchange, which potentially could be exchanged into national money.
I wasn't talking about national money. How can I just spend it into the economy?
How would it be introduced?
No, how could I, if I own a PPCC.
Okay, yes.
Spend it into the economy. Why would people want it from you?
Right. Well, first of all, because of its potential as a micro savings instrument, so it has benefits. In Kenya, where the national rate of inflation is something like 18% or more, then it's more stable. That's the first thing. The second thing is when you have a group of participating businesses, and in rural areas you have a lot of farmers who have crops which can be exchanged, but they don't have a medium of exchange to use to exchange other than barter, which is inefficient. So this provides an additional source of liquidity, in that sense purchasing power, which can be spent within participating businesses or farms, and potentially exchanged for national money at a later point in time if the tree is used for generating revenue from non-timber products.
Please. Yes. Yes.
I'm curious about the geography of the situation, where people are planting, and are they kind of close to each other in terms of distance, and if they're using the currency you propose, would that exchange be rather convenient for them to do amongst each other? I mean, what the numbers of them are, and would they make a community essentially? Right. Would that be a community that would use this currency exclusively?
Well, let me just start by saying that it's being implemented, the parallel plant is being implemented near Naivasha National Park, which is in the Rift Valley province of Kenya. The projects there, some of them are dispersed as far as I know, and so they're not necessarily connected in such a way, the communities aren't necessarily close enough geographically to necessarily have some kind of exchangeability between two instances of PPCC. But really those are important questions that would have to come up further down the line if this project was to be piloted with the full design. That would be necessary to consider those sorts of things. The way it works at the moment is because sometimes you have one investor investing in one particular area, then any issuance of PPCC could be tied to people within the vicinity of that plantation, or farmers or businesses within that vicinity.
So what kind of numbers are we talking about then? Hundreds of people, or 50
well,
people?
you would need enough to make it viable as a medium of exchange. So you would need places where people can spend and would be happy to receive.
Right.
So in that sense, you need to have a strong circuit without too much leakage and localized production and supply, which is why it might be quite useful which is why it might function quite well as a medium of exchange, because of the local nature of production and supply of food and all sorts of other.
Right, so these communities are sizable enough for that.
Oh yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
and I really am very impressed by the linking of currency to trees. It's just a marvelous idea.
Well, I think it has applicability. Sorry, if I can just make a point. I think it has the basic principle has applicability in a much wider range of things. And I'm thinking, for example, where people are growing, say, forestation schemes, and we have a number of such schemes in Ireland, say for firewood, which will be, say, import substitute, coal substitution, where particular types of trees are grown, and this becomes a currency and matures with age.
It's like a stock.
Absolutely, yeah, and that people can buy into. So in other words, they could potentially use these currency units as something to purchase their firewood, when it matures in the season. Obviously, you wouldn't need it in Croatia.
Well, I think that's important to building, sometimes in cases like in Kenya, where indigenous trees are being cleared and replaced with tree plantations, but not indigenous tree plantations. Then you lose you're really having a devastating impact on the ecological heritage of a country like Kenya. And I'm sure it's applicable to Ireland and other places as well, because every place has its own indigenous varieties and species.
This would be a way to foster protection for these indigenous trees.
I think it has that potential, because the currency is backed by real value.
Yeah.
Trees have real value, and they also have less tangible value in the form of the ecological value. But with PPCC, you can also provide real, tangible monetary value, so it can be exchangeable, so that people don't just have to be promised, well, you'll have a better climate in the future.
Until they learn the further implications of what they're doing. If they don't understand them, they can be incentivized where the money was.
The gentleman is first.
I have, yeah. So I have a question to Karen. I would like to ask about the kind of currency you described. Does it somewhere exist in your country or in Great Britain, and is it allowed by the law?
Yeah, I mean, well, on the first question, yes, there's been numerous currencies in Ireland. Some of them are Let's-based currencies. At the moment, there's a number of communities because you know, the local liquidity in the economy is quite reduced, and I know this has been alluded to by a number of speakers. So a number of communities have set out local currencies, and they're really quite small affairs at the moment. So we're working on one such project, and that would be, it's actually sponsored by a commercial organisation, and I know this has caused some difficulty with the purists who felt that it should just be a community-based currency. But we feel if a value can be established in the principle of complementary currencies, albeit sponsored by a commercial entity, then it would still help us to improve and understand how these currencies, complementary currencies, can exist. On your second point, which is a very important point, is the legality, because it's a question we're continuously asked. And we have taken the step of getting a senior counsel or a legal expert's opinion, professional opinion, and that is published and is available under articles, under the EU legislation. So we believe, and that is free, that is available if you need help to find that, we're happy to make that available. That complementary currencies are legal under EU legislation.
And maybe one question. Do you think if the mainstream currency like British pound or US dollar or euro will not be infected by the financial parasites,
Yes.
maybe we don't need complementary currency? What do you think about?
I'm not sure. Are you saying that if the
Yeah,
mainstream currency
Yeah,
wasn't affected by
because I think the financial market is somehow
turmoil, crisis?
In crisis, jest také deformovaný, deformated, deformed.
Yes. Yes.
If it will be not deformed, maybe we'll don't need the local currency. I don't know.
I would argue, I mean, it's part of the nature of the debt-based currency is that it is such a destructive thing, because it compels people to in order to repay the loan, whatever use they put, you know, they invest in a project, the value of that project has to grow faster than the original principal plus compound interest. And you know, for many people, that's been a real problem. The challenge is then the economy needs to grow at a minimum of 5% or 6% a year. But the downside is that if the collapse starts happening, it creates a real, you know, it becomes self-sustaining and it continues to get ever worse. So we're into, as long as we're linked to debt-based currencies, we're in this continuous roller coaster type environment.
Yeah.
Linked to failure.
Thank you.
Yes, designed to fail.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, some of the terminology is of the bankers rowing the economy, and to row so that they have a cycle where they're increasing the money supply into the market and encouraging people to borrow and to create bubbles, and then pulling back the money supply and getting to take in all the collateral that has been pledged against the loans.
Okay, thank you.
Rowing us over the waterfall.
Absolutely. And I'd also like, if I may, Mr. Chairman, Just to mention a very interesting study, and again I'd be happy to make this available, but it was done by a Swiss academic team using network analysis methodology.